In this technique we're going to use heat to distort and to grunge up old photographs. Try to find some negatives or some slides. We'll start with this and then we'll move over to prints in a moment. 35mm slides and negatives are just a little bit small, but they still do work. Here I'm using a 6x6cm transparency. Now with a small pair of pliers, hold the transparency and with a small propane torch start to add heat. The slide will start to buckle and bend, and it will start to singe in the places where you hold the heat over a little longer. Try not hold the flame over a certain area for too long, otherwise it will create a hole and eventually it could even set alight. Here you can see how beautiful and buckled the actual slide has become. Have a look at how the color has also changed dramatically. And on either side you get a slightly different result. Now using a macro lens you can go in and photograph certain areas of the slide. Remember, your depth of field will be very shallow, but you can use the buckling and bending for an effect. Place the slide down onto a light table and work with a tripod. You can photograph it straight from above, or you could also photograph it at an angle. You can also take the slide because it is so brittle and you can break it into smaller pieces. This can then be reassembled as a photo montage. Here is an example of the incredible effect you can get once photographed. The small size of a negative or a slide is indeed a little bit of a challenge, but a good idea is to work with silver gelatin photographic prints. Usually the manufacturer's name on the back of the print tells us that it was processed in chemistry. These prints burn beautifully. Not only do they distort a little under heat, but they also singe and blister well. You can also see an immediate change in the color. Besides digging through an old shoebox of photographs, you can also have these silver gelatin prints printed today. And you can take them quite far with the heat. And when you're done, they start to look old and historic, and they have a sort of sepia-toned type monochrome look to them. Silver gelatin prints, as opposed to inkjet prints, can take quite a lot of punishment. But don't keep the flame concentrated in one area for too long, otherwise they too will catch alight. This is why you should be working with a fire extinguisher at hand. Once done, you will re-photograph it, and you can see the beautiful blistering and singeing that has a complete unique feel. You can also photograph at angles to create shallow depth of field impressions. The process is quite addictive, and the trick is knowing when to stop, because there's no going back on this technique. Look at how this old building has been transformed completely. One of the nice things about heat and emulsion is that you're able to simplify photographs that are visually very busy. Here's another technique that you can try to grunge up the photograph even further. Once you've done your first heat pass, take some sugar and sprinkle it over the photograph. Now break up any areas where there is too much sugar so that it is spread fairly evenly. And just as you would caramelize a creme brulee, you would do exactly the same now with your photograph. The sugar will turn brown, but be very careful, because if you apply too much heat, you are definitely going to set the print alight. So have a small bottle of water in a spray gun so that you can douse the flames when this happens. Here you can see how grunged up this photograph has now become. Working with an inkjet print is a little bit different. Here you can see that it doesn't singe as well as a silver gelatin print would, and also it catches a light really quickly. So continuously douse it down with water, and here you may have to add sugar to grunge it up a bit. Every paper will react to heat differently. Here, for example, with an inkjet fine art print, the result is very different. The paper smolders and darkens continuously. It also catches a light really easily, so you need to work with water all the time. Using this paper, you can create incredible, low-key, moody art impressions. It's important that you understand that for every single paper, there is going to be a different effect, and experimentation is very important. In the world of fine art photography, heat and emulsion is a marriage made in heaven.